Hello and welcome. I'm Jennifer Shlomovich, and I help busy women simplify plant-based living so they can improve their health, save time, and feel supported, even if their family isn't on board. Here on the Confident Vegan channel, you'll find insightful interviews with inspiring vegans, practical tips for plant-based living, and empowering conversations about what it really means to live in alignment with your values. Today, my special guest is Safriana Lughna, who's a licensed trauma therapist who, with a little bit of unicorn magic, transformed into the Queer Spirit Guide, an international best-selling author, speaker, CEO, and transformational mentor. Safriana works with fellow leaders to get out of their own way so they can heck and slay. She supports them to step into their gifts, break free from limiting patterns, and create sustainable, soul-driven lives and businesses. Welcome, Safriana.
Thank you. It's a delight to be here with you.
It's a delight to have you. I want to heck and slay.
We all came here to heck and slay, I believe.
And I feel like you're the person who can show us how to do it.
That is exactly my purpose. That is why I am who I am, is to just shine my light so other people know they are fully allowed to shine their own. So, yeah, I dig it.
I am so excited to have you here because not only my focus isn't just about veganism, but it's about living a lifestyle different from the people around you, which
Mm.
I face as a vegan, plus other various scenarios in my life, which would be a whole other show. But and just as also a recovering people pleaser, I learned the hard way how important it is to understand your values and set boundaries with people because it otherwise it just can be horrible. It can be deadly. Like my
Mm.
mother, she died of a heart attack in 2007 from stress and other things, but like all that stuff takes a toll. And that was like that turning point for me of like, oh my God, like she used to push things aside all the time. Like, I'm going to do this one day, one day, one day, years would go on, and then one day never happened. And that was a seed planter planted a seed for me in realizing like, oh my God, if I don't start doing these things, that could be me. So I feel like boundaries, it's like a life-saving skill because if you don't set them, you're going to be miserable and unhappy.
Absolutely. And boundaries are so misunderstood.
Yes.
Like straight out of the gate, we don't even know what they mean, and yet we desperately need to, because they really are our bubble of what little control we have in this life about ourselves, right? And if we're not really creating that container for ourselves to live our lives in our values, then other people are going to design our lives for us.
Yeah, I love the analogy of a container because I feel like that's something like, right, it's like you're decorating a room, right? It's your container, it's your safe space. And it's true. I learned that if you don't know what your values are and where you stand and what you're all about and what's important to you, then it's very easy to take on those beliefs of other people.
Hmm.
And I remember it took me some time to even figure out who I was because I was so used to telling people telling me who I should be.
Yep.
Which that
I
in
know the
itself is a
story.
journey.
It is, yes. And I love that you share the story about being a recovering people pleaser, because so many people are. And I work with those people because we have been trained to show up and to give and to give and to give and to pull ourselves up by our bootstraps, and like all of these really toxic stories about productivity. And we've
Mhm.
normalized burning out. We've normalized stretching our boundaries and putting ourselves out there in really unhealthy ways, because it's been normalized as the correct thing to do, the polite thing to do,
Right.
the good girl and all of that.
That was me, right? The good
Hmm.
girl. Don't upset anybody. Tiptoe around everyone else's feelings.
Yep, been there myself. It's
Yeah.
and it is a journey. So I'm glad that you are sharing these stories. It's really
Yeah,
important.
and thank you for coming here because I'm really looking forward to having a thorough conversation. Because what you said, right? Like, what do boundaries even mean? Like,
Hmm.
people kind of know what it means, but there's a lot of, it's a loaded topic in itself.
It
So,
is, absolutely.
but before we dive into that, now, usually I ask my guests to share their vegan stories. And you shared with me that you're 95% vegan. Which, and I talk about all the time on my channel. It's a process. Like, it took me 2 years to become vegan, and it's a personal journey. It takes time, and everyone has different needs and situations. And so I always try to create a space that promotes that to meet people wherever they are on
Mhm.
their journey. And I understood what it took for me to get to that point where I was ready to commit. But can you share a little bit about what you mean by being 95% vegan?
Yeah. So, on my just on the question of my vegan journey, I've been fully vegan many
Okay.
times in my life. I actually the first full time was when I was 15, and unfortunately my family was not on board and they made it very difficult for me to do it. And when you're a kid, you don't, talking about boundaries, very important here. When you're a kid, if the adults in your life are not respecting your boundaries, like you don't have much power over that. So I want to validate that because it's not the
Hmm.
same as when we're adults. But
Right.
when I came into adulthood, I went vegan again. And then at various different times, I listened to the needs of my body and would go either pescatarian or vegetarian. Right now, I would say I fall into the vegetarian camp because I am 95% vegan, but I occasionally, I mean, I routinely honestly use honey, and I have nuanced feelings about that because I'm a gardener.
Hmm.
I grow we grow, I would say, a good 70% of our vegetables right now. And I see what the bees do. Like I have a relationship with the bees, and so
Mm.
I've really understood that personal relationship with bees, that local, bee raisers. That's what I like bee carers, caretakers,
Hmm.
nurturers, not bee farmers, not people who are mass producing, but like local products are what I look into. So I'm 95%, but I do use some honey. I do use ghee, specifically ghee that is imported from India. Like
Okay.
like that this is one of those, my values are the least harm possible, the most sacredness possible, and really just the least harm possible. So, ghee is something my body occasionally really needs to do deep cellular repair. This is out of the Ayurvedic sciences.
Hmm.
Having learned deeply about Ayurveda, ghee was a huge healing food for people. And occasionally, my body needs it, but we still use like olive oil and coconut oil like 90% of the time. So it's for me, it's been listening to my body, and my body does not need animal products for the most part. Doesn't need it.
Hmm.
We can feel intuitively or nutritionally sometimes that there's a gap. And if I need something, I'm going to try and source it in the least harmful way possible. And that's the thing that for me, I think many vegans and vegetarians and carnivores, omnivores on their own food journeys, wherever they're at, like we slip around these figuring out what we need and what feels most in alignment. And I know if people strive for perfectionism, they are far more likely to end up failing and beating on themselves and then not continuing down that path of least harm, because
Hmm.
now they're harming themselves and beating on themselves about the judgments, and that can actually like ricochet into more choices that go against our values. So it's really this, every moment is a choice point, and we can move towards our values or away from our values. And with food, I just try to meet those values as much as I humanly can. And when I don't live in that fully vegan lifestyle, I'm still trying to source as local, small farm, like if it is an animal product, I want to know that that animal has a good life
Hmm.
where it's not being tortured in some way because what we eat gives us energy. We are what we eat. And I don't think anyone benefits from putting, harm in their bodies, that energy of harm. So that's like where I'm at. It's again, for the most part, we cook our own vegetables and we get bulk grains and we eat a lot of really great plant-based foods and very, very occasionally we eat some animal products, but that we have sourced. Like this is
Hmm.
again, and not perfectionism, but as much as humanly possible. Where can we source something that is as harm reduced as possible? For us, for the planet, for the animals, for everyone involved.
I really appreciate your perspective. And even though like I'm fully vegan
Hmm.
and committed, I feel it's important to have someone who is in this space that you're in right now because it's especially helpful for people who are in that transitional place.
Hmm.
Like it took me 2 years to transition to be a vegan, right? It was a journey of it all started with me realizing I have eczema and rosacea and reading how different foods can cause these flare-ups. So something intuitively told me to give up dairy for like
Hmm.
30 days. So I did a little experiment because experiments are, you know, it's an experiment. You're just trying it. You don't have to do it forever if you don't
Yeah.
want to. So I did 30 days without dairy. And I instantly started to, like, within a few days, started to feel different. And during that 30-day period, my skin started to get better, my sinuses improved, and there was this overall general sense of well-being that, like, I didn't realize how crappy dairy was making me feel.
So inflammatory. It really,
It
really is.
really is inflammatory. And during that time, I was looking up dairy-free recipes, and that's when a lot of vegan recipes came up on like Pinterest and blogs. And I'm like, wow, this food looks better than the stuff that I make. Like, right, bright, different colors of veggies and different spices and seasonings that I've never cooked with before. Like, I never made Indian food before until I was vegan. I've had it out, but I never like made it. And and it's different when you make it yourself and just all the other ethnic cuisines out there. There's so much stuff out there. And I'm like, wow, this is like really good food. On top of that, I discovered whole food plant-based and forks over knives. And as I mentioned before, my mother had a heart attack and being concerned about health, but aging and wanting to eat better in general because I didn't want to develop heart disease or diabetes that runs in my family. I wanted to start eating in a way that would support that. So it started off with like this like health thing and I started getting some cookbooks and then I watched a documentary. It was Vegucated. I don't know if you've ever seen that one.
I've seen so many documentaries at this point that, again, that's like why my value is no torture in my food. Thank you.
Yeah.
Like, no animal should suffer for us.
Yeah. And that's what planted that seed because
Hmm.
it's like there's this cognitive dissonance, right? Of we know how it we know what it is, we don't really think about it, right? And uh that planted that seed when I watched that documentary. And I was like, "Oh my God, I would like to be vegan." But my family's not going to want to be vegan. And at the time, our my husband and my kid we have blended family. So we have three boys between the two of us. And at the time they were younger and I'm like and we had different custody schedules and so it was like I was not going to be able to make everyone on the same path as me. But what I just started doing was again cooking. I'm a cookbook junkie, so I would buy different cookbooks and try different things and have fun with it. And then more and more it was like my soul, like this is the listening to yourself. There was something within me that was just nagging me to go vegan. So after like a year and a half of this, I finally decided to do an experiment again and go vegan to see how it would be to actually go vegan and commit to it. So I put it on Facebook to make it real. 2 weeks before Thanksgiving, when we were supposed to go to a friend's house, and I made a lentil loaf and I made these like black bean cookies that tasted like fudge and brought them over. And people were curious. It was like a good social experiment for me. Like people were curious. There was a couple of comments, but overall it went well and I survived.
Yeah,
And
that's important.
then yeah, it's like right, we build things up in our head and then after a couple months of being vegan, I was having some health stuff and a doctor told me to eat salmon or fish. So I did incorporate fish back and I did it for a few months. And then I started to get an aversion to it. Like, again, talking intuitively, my soul was like screaming at me. I don't know how else to explain it.
I
My
know this
soul.
exact feeling.
Okay, so you know when your soul is screaming at you. And I was like, I can't, and I stopped fish. And then since April of 2017, I have been a committed vegan. And sharing like in some ways our stories are similar but then they're different, right? There's the listening to your body. We both know what it's like to have our soul scream at us. And what I do appreciate that is that your emphasis on no as little, no harm, right? No, as little harm as possible, no harm, you're really focused you know on that, where a lot of other people may not necessarily think about that. And so I feel like your story and your position on it is especially important for people who are in that in between place. And so I really am glad we were able to have like this conversation, even though we're similar, but then we're different. There's still that space of having conversation about it, and I hope that this is valuable for others tuning in to see that it took me 2 years.
And
And you for you, you're doing what's in alignment for your values right now.
right.
And that's okay.
Yeah, and it's a spectrum. And unfortunately, I think a lot of people are afraid to even identify as vegan or to try and be vegan-esque because there's been and this is like a both ends of the spectrum, the really negative ends of the spectrum. There's
Mhm.
the militant vegan who's like anyone who's not vegan is doing so much harm in the world and they're a bad person. And then there's the carnivore meat eater who's like, for every vegan out there, I'm going to eat 3 steaks today. And
Ugh,
they're like, I'm going to go even harder into the harm. And it's like both of those, I to me, neither of those make me happy because everyone is different. And looking at our evolution, looking at humanity, some people's bodies do occasionally need these things that we get from an animal product. But back in time, way back in time before factory farming and what we have all these documentaries about now, it was a small village where one person went out and caught a couple of fish or they raised cattle. And then, there was the yearly very sad but also honored slaughter. And like those things we're so removed from now that in this spectrum of doing less harm, we have to understand the harm we're doing first to know like do I want to engage in that? Because there are some people out there that if they knew the whole process, they would be like, sure, I still want to eat meat and I will go forth and do that myself. But most of us would not want to do that. Like realistically, that's not how we would want to source our food because that's not 95% of what humans are actually supposed to eat. Like if we were even in harmony, this wouldn't be a conversation because we would not be doing the egregious levels of harm that we are on this planet, but we are like we're factory making harm and
yeah.
torture, and that's just not okay. So, perfectionism, this two ends of the spectrum, like accept you're sliding towards the the not militant everybody better be this or they're a bad person, but the I'm making my empowered valued choice to be vegan or as moving down that end of the spectrum as you can be. And no one else has to be that unless they want to be empowered to be that too. Because that's how it took you 2 years, but now you're empowered in it. You know what it was like to make that choice and to really choose that for yourself. Just like when I think my longest fully vegan stint was like 7 years. And
Hmm.
then similar to you, my body was like, we have a nutritional gap. And same thing, I ate salmon specifically for a short stint of time, and then my body went, "Ooh, we're done." And I went, back towards where I am now, which is like the 95%. So that's still doing so much less harm
Right.
too than being in this like guilt mindset because I also as a therapist, I know a lot of our trauma stories, and I can't tell you how many vegans have so much vegan guilt that when they crack, they go to Popeyes and they buy a bucket of chicken,
Oh, wow.
which is like torture, right? Like it's not happy. Those were not happy chickens that got honored. Like there's no nuance in that. But that weight of that guilt, right? The disempowerment that if I'm not perfect can crack people. So that's where we have to have our own boundaries with ourselves too, of like, no, I'm going to have this boundary to do as little harm as possible and for myself and for the world, and to allow yourself to be in that without that like, and if I don't do that, I'm a horrible, awful person and am unworthy. Like so many people I know, they feel like they're unworthy, they're bad, they're wrong, they're too much. But we're all doing our best. We're all human. And moving
Yeah.
towards that side of no harm is a great place to be. So give yourself grace.
Yeah, yeah, and it's important to do that. And the only thing that I want to just add to that is that if someone does choose to commit being fully vegan, that there are ways to meet all those nutritional gaps as well.
Absolutely.
Like you can work with a nutritionist who is skilled with that. So if you do feel like your certain nutritional needs aren't being met, there are ways of doing it without relying on animal products. And again, again, everyone's on a journey for all of those things.
Yeah.
And it's just, you know, again, where you are, and it could take time. It
Hmm.
takes time, but it's more, I think for me, like, but the change was not traumatic and has been sustainable because I did it at my own pace.
Hmm.
And for me, looking back, it's like, oh my God, how come I didn't do it sooner? But then I also understand where I am, and that's why part of why I'm doing this work is start some. I'm a big believer in progress over perfection,
Yes.
and so whatever gets you there, whatever is helping you do less harm little by little, and it builds, you'll build on that, and you'll figure out your own journey. And so yeah, anyway, I just appreciate you sharing all of that because I've had some non-vegans on my channel before who were sharing information that was just relevant to my audience in other areas like boundaries and confidence and emotional intelligence. You're the first 95% vegan that I had, and we're going to be doing a deep dive on boundaries in a moment. But I just felt like, you know what, this would be, a good way to have that conversation to show people, especially who feel like I could never be vegan,
Yeah.
right? Like I feel like your mindset is helpful for people who want to get started but feel overwhelmed. So I feel like your perspective is, I think, very valuable for those who feel like, they can't do it at all, right? And like you were
Yes.
saying, it's a spectrum. There's the one extreme to the other extreme. And you you know, the as we live, we're always evolving. So
Hmm. And I mean, I've never been on the I'm going to eat 6 steaks to make up for the vegans end of the camp, but I've definitely also been in that, like, if you're not a vegan, I think you're a bad person camp temporarily in myself, right? Exploring
Mhm.
that. And I talk about these things because we're real humans and
Yeah.
none of us are perfect. And again, I also know those people who are like, well, I want to be able to have conversations with people who live a vegan lifestyle, who are 100% plant-based, but if I'm not 100% vegan, I'm going to be excluded. And I've been excluded before for being 95% because I'm like, well, I use honey. Can I still do the thing? And they're like, no. And I'm like, okay, well, that is a you have to be 100% situation. And very rarely are we always 100%, right? You've been 100% for 2 years, and that's fantastic. I was 100% for 7 years, and that's fantastic. And there are some people who are going to be 1%, 99%. They're going to be all over the place. And all of that reduction of harm is worth celebrating.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, like for me, it's been 8.5 now, completely vegan. And but yeah, I remember exactly those other versions of me were. And so whatever, again, gets people to do less harm and hopefully become vegan. But again, it's a journey. And so, yeah, I appreciate you sharing your perspective on all of that. Um, so now I want to like shift gears and what inspired you to get into the work that you do now?
Well, the longest story short is I went from being a public school educator to realizing I wanted to help people on a deeper level, to becoming a trauma therapist, to going, oh gosh, I'm in a system and I really want to help people break out of the system, break out of the traditional ways of thinking. And so I'm still a trauma therapist, but I realized I needed more freedom to really be myself and explore my values, which is why I tiptoed into the coaching world. And then I realized the word coach wasn't quite right for me, and that guide felt more like my soul's calling. And I just kind of followed that flow and created a lot of the offerings I'm doing now. I've been doing spiritual work like Wheel of the Year and lunar rituals for over 18 years now. And so it was kind of this time to marry that spiritual half with the logical half and just be fully me. Like we were talking about at the beginning, I think, my purpose is just to be me and shine my light so other people feel like, oh, I could be me too. I don't love anything in the world that says there's only one right way to be.
Yeah.
So it's like I feel fueled by helping people find their right way to be, knowing that they're going to flex all over their own spectrums. I think that's a big part of what drew me to what I do is understanding so much of life is on a spectrum,
Yeah.
truly.
I love what you just shared too, because that's a big part of what I'm doing also is just wanting people to feel confident, confidently be themselves. The name of this channel before it was The Confident Vegan was Confidently Be You. And then I figured out a way to combine my veganism with my passion for confidence and boundary setting. And sometimes I just talk about those things and not so much the vegan thing, right? But my journey to veganism was another area of eliminating people pleasing, right? It's like, I need to do this for me. And then I eventually had a conversation with my husband, and I was like, hey, you know what? I gonna do this now. At the time, I cooked non-vegan food for the family, but then when we became empty nesters and we moved and we settled into our new life, I had another conversation of, you know what? If you want the not, the animal stuff, you have to cook it. I didn't say it exactly like that, but more or less like
Boundaries, right?
boundary.
You
Right.
control your actions.
Right. And what I tell people is if somebody can't, and it's all about communication, right? It's all in how you say it. If you respectfully tell somebody what you need and they disrespect you for that, then that tells you a lot about that person and that relationship. My husband was supportive. Would he like it? Would it be easier for him if I was not vegan? Yes. But he's supportive and he's adjusted with it and he's respectful of it. And I share that a lot with people because people think, "Oh, I can't do X, Y, and Z because of the people around me." And again, if people love you and care about you, then they would respect what you need to do for you.
Mhm. Yes. Yes. I mean, this ties so much into what I teach about boundaries too. Like, one of my core teachings and boundaries is people who don't respect your no don't deserve your yes. But when it comes
Mm,
to what you're putting in your body, the choices that you're making for what you are doing in your own actions, like, you don't owe anyone anything. You are not required to eat a certain way, show up a certain way, cook a certain thing because someone else wants you to. Like, that's, your boundary is literally the circle around you. That's why I said container. But it's a container that moves with you through the world. And so if someone starts to try and punch through your container and you did not give them permission, like, you remove yourself. That's another reason I brought up earlier, when you're a kid, you don't necessarily have that capacity. As an adult, 99% of the time we do. Of course, there are extreme situations where we are under, threat of violence or something, where we legitimately might not be able to make a decision for ourselves. 99% of the time, that is not the case. And anything that says we have to be a certain way or do a certain thing is an old story, or we are stuck in that child self who couldn't
yeah.
who couldn't draw the boundary, who couldn't get out of the situation. So yeah, if someone can't, if you're in a relationship and they demand that you cook them meat and you are absolutely in every way opposed to that, they shouldn't be making that demand of you. And there's a huge difference between boundaries and demands. Huge difference.
Ooh, I never thought about that before.
Well,
But you're right, there is.
I need you to go cook me this is a unfortunate phrase that probably exists in far too many relationships.
I'm sure it does.
Uh
Thankfully, not in mine, but
yes, not in
yes.
mine, right? But been there before. But this, like, I need you to is a demand. You need to even can be a demand, but couched
Mm,
in the I'm pushing it off on you. A boundary is, I am willing and I am unwilling to engage in XYZ, because our
mm,
boundary is what we are willing and unwilling to do. So, I'm not going to cook meat anymore. You need to do that on your own if you want it, is a perfect boundary, because you're saying what you are and are not willing to do with your own two hands, with your body, with your energy. You get to determine, like, that is what a boundary is what you are determining you will and will not engage with. So when it comes to, I need you to stop eating meat, that would be a demand. That would not be a boundary. Now, a boundary can be, I'm not willing to be in a relationship with someone who eats meat. That could be a very sad breakup, right? But some people may have that boundary, but it's not right. It's not acceptable in my book, because this is getting into non-consent category and demands of saying,
right.
well, if you want to be with me, you have to do this. Instead, it's, I am willing or unwilling to be in this kind of relationship, not putting it off on someone else that they have to change or they have to do something to satisfy your desire. And it's nuanced because, we can get so deep in the weeds of, well, shouldn't relationships be about compromise? Yes and no. It should never compromise on our values. But,
Mm,
it might be the compromises, I'm willing to be in a relationship with a non-vegan, but I will not cook for them. And maybe that there's some other boundaries around that. Like, maybe you don't share a fridge drawer, or they have their own freezer, or they cook in a different room. Like, there could be some other bigger boundaries, but not, they need to completely disengage from this for me to stay in a relationship, and I'm demanding we stay in a relationship. Therefore, they need to change. No.
I really appreciate you sharing all those nuances because you're right. Like I haven't thought about it in that way. But yeah, 100%. Like and that's the thing too, like people evolve. Like my husband and I, we've been together since 2011
Mhm.
and we've been married since 2015. I didn't become vegan till 2017. So we've had a lot of life together before I went through this change.
Mhm.
And I value my husband and our relationship, more than his dietary choice, right?
Yeah.
And and that's the thing, like a healthy relationship, in my opinion, is one that can evolve with each other, right? And that's, I think, maybe an element of compromise where maybe it not necessarily be your way of doing something, but if it's a personal choice, it's like, how can I respect this person? And yeah, this is different now. This person's doing things differently than when I first met them, right? Or I'm doing things differently than but if it's someone you really love and care about and you value them, you can find a way.
As long as the rest of the communication is healthy, right? It
Yeah.
really does, like, our individual life choices don't have to impact each other that much as long as we can be honest and open. Side note, I am a polyamory educator and a polyamorous person, so like boundaries and relationships and nuanced needs are like my bread and butter. So yes, you can be in a relationship with someone with different dietary needs as long as you can be honest. Like I've been in a relationship before where someone was like, "Yeah, I'm gonna go completely vegan slash vegetarian with you," and then I found out they were sneaking meat. Like they were going out and getting fast food, but they were
Hmm.
still telling me that they were completely vegetarian. And so that was more of a deal breaker for me than if they had just been like, "Yeah, when I'm hanging out with you, I'll eat vegan."
Because that's like a lot that because then that hits honesty, right? Like
Right.
for me, like then because then to me that's like a trust issue,
Mhm.
right? Like how can I trust you if you're lying to me about this?
Right. So it's like being able to have nuanced conversations about your values and why each of you is making different choices. And I think in relationships, when we stand in our power and we stand in our values, especially around our eating, and we show up and we share delicious foods that are doing no harm, like that inspires people far more than making demands of people to change the way that they're doing things, right? It's an invitation.
Yeah.
Oh, do you want to join me over here doing this thing? An invitation, right? And our boundaries are very much the same. They're an invitation to someone to say like, this is what I need in a relationship. Would you like to join me inside my bubble or do you want to stay outside the bubble?
Yeah.
Right? A boundary is really an invitation to, like you said, if someone doesn't respect them, it tells you a lot about their values and what they are and are not willing to engage
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, this is such a good conversation.
in.
I am so happy to have you here just to kind of really, because like you were saying, getting into the weeds of this topic, which again, it's so important to me from all of my life experiences. And I feel like, again, if it's the root of our happiness and well-being.
Mhm.
And we are coming up to the holidays. Like we're recording this, it's November 3rd. So this is going to come out the following week. So whatever that Wednesday is. I have to look.
Soon.
So a week from this Wednesday. So it's coming out before Thanksgiving. And this can be between Thanksgiving and Hanukkah and Christmas and all the holidays. It can be so challenging
Mhm.
to share space with family. What
Yeah.
are some common challenges you have experienced or you have helped clients work through during this time of year?
Oh gosh. I mean, so much of it is those triggers, right? Because those little comments get made, a lot of our family dynamics, our childhood family dynamics come up around the holidays. So, even understanding that if you've had stressful family dynamics, the holidays are not going to make it any better, right? And so, really having some tools in your pocket to anchor and ground yourself so that you can stay empowered in your values, because it's really easy to give in or to change our mind or do something we don't want to do to stop a trigger or to stop that bullying from happening or that response that is giving us a negative feeling, right? So, anchored in your body, your breath is your number one tool. And, I love to teach this super simple, easy, like nervous system reset. I call it the no tiger twist, which is literally twisting your body. So you just kind of look down behind you and then up, and then you twist completely to the other side and look down and up. And then you kind of come back to center. And this tells your nervous system, I'm not running from a tiger right now. Because if you can slow down and look behind you and look above you, you're not in
It was
imminent
strangely
danger.
calming when I just did that.
It's so that is your number. Like I swear I teach this on every podcast I go on because it's the most number one valuable tool that you have is just your
Wow.
ability to stimulate your vagus nerve, connect your
Pretty
head to your
calming.
body. Yes, and do that twist. So if you're like feeling the oncoming attack from a relative or those questions and you're feeling yourself getting really activated and you're going into that fight flight freeze, if you can take a moment to look around the room you're in, like look away from that person, just check behind you and look around for a moment, take a nice deep breath. Are you going to look weird? Who cares? Because if you're already impending in freak out mode, like that's going to help you so much more to just take that breath and look around, reorient your nervous system. And so really pausing and just checking in with yourself. But, you know, I think that there can be I want to just go back to that choice point that I mentioned earlier. And the idea of the choice point comes from acceptance and commitment therapy or ACT. And essentially when you come to that fork in the road, you can move towards your values or away from your values. So I used to
Mm.
actually use the example of going and getting fast food because I was a public school teacher. So I could be very stressed at the end of the day and not want to go eat, not want to go home and cook. So I just want something quick. And I would end up getting fast food a lot. But that was moving me away from my values of sustainability and health and so many things, right? Do no harm. This was my early 20s and it was a terrible time. And then over time I learned about, oh, well, what I really value is health and sustainability and ethics. So I'm going to try and make as many choices going down that path over and over and over and over again as I can. So I think at the holidays, many of us face these choice points, especially if we
Hmm.
don't have families that eat the way that we value eating. And it can be easy to say, oh, just this time I'm gonna sneak this thing over here. If you do, my friends, like you're not going to get struck down by lightning. But your guilt may be something that you would rather not handle. Like when it comes to your values, you're probably going to value standing in your power and making the choice to not eat the thing that goes against your values than making that choice to go against it. So it's like remembering that every moment is a choice. And if you slip, is it the end of the world? No, but you will feel that against your alignmentness, and that breaks down your own self trust. So every choice because in the nuance conversation, I say we don't have to be perfect. But then there's that other side, that inner saboteur that says, well, I don't have to be perfect. So this time I get, and then next thing you know, we're completely moving away from our values all the time. So I say that with not using that as an excuse or giving yourself permission to move away from your values, but to give yourself that grace so that you have the room and the resources to move towards your values. Because if you stress yourself out and you shame yourself and you guilt yourself all the time, that reduces your mental resources, which makes it easier to lean into those non value filled choices. So build yourself up. Remind yourself, do some mirror work before you go out and be with your family. Look at yourself in that mirror and say, like, I value my health. I value my alignment. I value harmony or doing no harm or whatever your value is, and stay anchored in that.
Hmm.
And again, I don't love this like guilt yourself. It's but remember what it feels like when you go against your values because you've done it before.
Yeah.
So
You know,
remember it.
what you said is so important because, right, or like you're saying, the saboteur, like there's a little bit of nuance. There's a nuance in everything. Like nothing is black and white, right? There's a
Nothing.
lot of variations in all of these things. Context, right? So there's the not being perfect. That's one thing. But then there's what you're saying before, going against your values. Because the more you do that, the crappier you're going to feel. You're going to feel, and that builds resentment, right? Because you
Mm-hmm.
then do the thing. There's been so many times I have been to other family members, and a lot of family is supportive, but there's been a couple occasions where it's like, oh, this has egg in it, but just a little. No, not, I'm not going, it's no, 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 it's not going to hurt you. It goes against my values,
Right.
right? And then there are people like not close family, but just going to family functions, seeing family that I don't normally see or haven't seen in years. And sometimes people can be combative.
Mm-hmm.
People feel threatened when I say I'm vegan. And I'm not in their face being combative. I'm not telling people what they need to do. But people ask me why I'm vegan, and then some people get their own trigger, and then they want to, show me.
Right.
And what I just do is I just shut it down very tactfully. I just say, look, I'm not telling you how to live your life. And this is what's right for me.
Yeah.
And
And
that's
that's,
more or less what I do.
yeah, that's beautiful to just shut that down. And this is, that boundary is like, what you are and are not willing to do. So at the holiday time, you can make sure that you have something that you will be willing to eat and willing to share. I my own journey, I've been in and out of all kinds of different things, and I don't celebrate Thanksgiving anymore.
Mhm.
But when I was celebrating Thanksgiving, like I deliberately, because my family was like, it's your turn to host. And I'm like, okay, but it's going to be a fully vegan Thanksgiving. And that's if you're coming into my home,
Mhm.
like your home, your body. That's what you
Yeah.
have full permission to have boundaries over. And so if anyone, that like, it's just a little egg, it's fine. Oh my gosh, like that's consent and that is our body's sovereignty. So if you don't
Yeah.
want to put something into your body, you don't, and no one has the right to tell you otherwise. And that's that. I don't know why it is with diet something that we feel like we can comment on, but no. That should not be the case.
Yeah, I agree. And you're right, right? That is your sovereignty. That is what's important to you. And again, when you violate yourself by ignoring your needs, you're only hurting yourself, and you're teaching people how to engage with you,
Hmm.
right? And then they're going to know, oh, I can get away with this time. What else can I get away with? It kind of reminds me, did you ever see Jurassic Park, the original Jurassic Park movie? Do you remember when they talked about how the dinosaurs were testing the fence to see if they
See
could
how far
like,
they can go.
right? And eventually they did, right? But they didn't mind the shock. They would test it right? And that's the same thing is people will test that electric fence with
Yes.
you to see what they can get away with next time. And 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 then and so you're teaching them and you're also wearing down that inner resistance of advocating for yourself. And when you don't do that, it sucks.
Yes. One of the things that I really teach about boundaries is that it's very important you be able to uphold your own boundary because there are going to be people that are going to try and push past. Like that's the unfortunate nature of the world we live in right now. We live with a lot of divisiveness,
Yeah.
and it's through standing in our power and being compassionate. But compassion, this is another core teaching of mine, compassion does not equal enabling. So letting
Yes.
someone push your limits further enables them to do harm to you. So if you're compassionate, compassion is actually saying, like, nope, this is what I'm willing to do to engage. And oh, I'll raise my little hand there. Um, this is what I'm willing to do to engage, and I'm not willing to be violated. And that is actually really compassionate because it says, here's where I'm willing to meet you human to human, and here's where I'm not.
Yeah, that's a really important point, and I'm so glad you mentioned that. And I want to dive deeper. You mentioned to me before we've recorded this, like when we first met a couple weeks ago, that you have 5 tips for better boundaries. Can you share what those 5 tips are?
Yeah, so the essence of them is I've shared a lot of them woven in this, but people who don't respect your no don't deserve your yes.
Hmm.
So really being able to know that you don't have to justify your boundary. Like just using the vegan example, you don't have to justify why you made the choice to stand in the choice. If someone's still trying to push past that, that tells you more about who they are, right?
Yeah.
Your boundaries protect you, not others. Like boundaries aren't about controlling other people's behavior, they're about what you'll accept and what you won't accept. So that's number 2. Number 3 is compassion does not equal enabling. Like you can have empathy for someone who behaves poorly and still protect yourself. You can be like, man, whatever they're going through that they feel the need to argue with me about this every time we get together, that can be their experience. I'm going to disengage and let them know that I'm unwilling to continue this dynamic. Boundaries versus demands. Like a boundary is not a demand. It's not you need to do this. It is I need such and such. So are
Hmm.
you willing to honor that? Would you be willing to meet me there, right? Um, just like you did with your husband. I'm gonna cook vegan. Are you willing to cook your own food if we're gonna be in this relationship in this way, right? Great. And then the final one that we didn't explicitly talk about is that your boundaries can change and that's okay. So, right now,
Mm.
your internal boundary might be I am eating meat, but that is really cool that it can change. You might choose to go fully vegan, you might slide down that spectrum. And then there might be times where, for whatever reason, you move out of that and it's okay to move back in. Like, we're allowed to have these ebbs and flows. So, what felt okay to you last year might not feel okay now. Jennifer, with you took those 2 years, and I apologize earlier. I got the 2 years and the 8 years
Oh, that's
there.
okay.
But your 2 years that it took you to go vegan, you were in a state where you were like, okay, right now it feels sort of okay to eat in this other lifestyle way. But then you got to the point where now you're like, no, it doesn't feel okay. Like I'm not going back there. So it is okay to have your boundaries change over time. And when you get out of certain relationships, sometimes they shift because you realize that you were meeting demands and not
Yeah.
really your own boundaries too. So all of these tips are from my free resource, which is on my website, and you can go download the whole thing and read all of the little nuanced tips in there if you want. And that is literally at my website, which is my first name.com. So safriana.com/free. It's very easy to go there.
That is very easy. And I will also put the notes below this video as well so people can easily find you. And you have a lot of great things on your website.
I
You
do
have
a
a
lot of
lot of
stuff.
amazing stuff.
Thank you. Yeah, I was just talking to someone earlier who engages with my stuff and they're like, "You just love to give." I'm like, "I do just love to give things for free." So there's all kinds of free things. Don't hesitate.
Awesome. Yeah. And before we wrap up, I can't believe how long we've been talking. It went by so fast. Um, what are some other resources you would like to recommend, either your own or other books or podcasts that have inspired you?
Yeah, well, in terms of moving towards plant-based eating or vegan eating, I love Herman on I watch him on YouTube.
Oh.
He does all kinds of plant-based cuisine from around the world.
Hmm.
I love Plantiful Kiki. She does the starch solution, which is 50% grain, 50%, well, not 50% grain, 50% starch, 50% non-starchy vegetable as your diet. And she has some really fantastic, simple recipes. And
Nice.
then there is, and I am so sorry, I don't know her name off the top of my head. I just know her platform name, which is the Korean vegan. And she is incredible. She does a lot of social justice as she shows really fantastic vegan food.
Nice.
So I am mainly a video gal, but Plantful Kiki has books. Herman just released a book. The Vegan Korean just released a book. So there's all kind like all three of those creators and their books I would highly recommend. In terms of my own resources, there's the freebie page online where it's just self-empowerment stuff. So I have my 5 tips for building better boundaries, some meditations, things like that. And I do free moon ceremonies, which are all about dropping into our values. So
Hmm.
if you are just looking for that spiritual upliftment, come join me there in moon ceremony.
I love a good moon ceremony.
Yes. And they're always free. They're always live streamed on YouTube, so no one has to out themselves as, engaging in moon ceremony, whatever that means. But I do it the way that I do for a reason.
At one point there had been a part of me that would be afraid to say I like a good moon ceremony, but now, and that's one thing I'm going to add to it. It's like building a muscle, right? Confidence, boundary setting. It's all takes time to cultivate. And when you first do something that you're not used to doing, it is really uncomfortable
Yes.
and triggering, but then also empowering,
Yes.
right? And the more you do it, like just like the more you people please, the more it's easier for people to steamroll you. The more you don't people please and you set boundaries and all that stuff, the easier it gets for you to do it to the point where it becomes second nature. Like who
Hmm.
I am now versus who I was 15 years ago are very different people. Like
Yes.
I had to come out and find myself. And we're so encased with other people's belief systems, like, we're talking about childhood, right? And if you're growing up in an environment where you're not free to explore who you are and you're just told who to be, it can be very confusing as an adult.
Yes. I mean, yes, all of that. We are literally put in little check boxes. And that's, that's what I help people do is break out of those check boxes because we're not meant to be cookie cutter. You're so
No.
unique. Your body has unique needs, your mind, your spirit, you're unique. So celebrate yourself. I thank you for having me on to have this conversation. It was a joy.
That was so lovely having you here. If you ever want to come back and talk about something else, or love to have you back. It was really lovely talking about you or talking with you and learning more about you and your work. And yeah, so everyone, I'm going to share Safriana's links down below as well as the resources. I'll look them up and put them there too so you can find them. And I hope you all have a great day and I'll see you real soon. Bye for now.